Okay, Mrs. C, you can stop dancing now. Tilcon, New York. Top of the morning to you. This is Sal Cacavalli coming to you from Eastern Pennsylvania. I have to stop with the accent because Mrs. Cacavalli tells me every time I do, I start going into different directions. So, hopefully you had a good week. We're well into the, we're finishing up with the maintenance shutdowns, and we're now getting ready to operate for the season. Yay. So, this week, thanks to Mrs. Cacavalli's talented drawing, we have a little bit of St. Patty's Day. So we're going to go forward, and today we're going to talk a little bit about situational awareness, and we'll talk a little bit about hazard recs, and we'll take it from there. So one of the things about hazard recs, just for the situational awareness aspect of it, is understanding that a hazard recognition is recognizing the presence of a hazard. We always talk about our risk perceptions and our risk tolerances. Well, risk perception is judging the level of danger that the hazard poses. So you have this hazard, the risk is the perception of the level of the danger that hazard poses. And then we always talk about the risk tolerance, right? We have these risk tolerance factors, but for risk tolerance, it's how to behave around that hazard. So how do you behave when you know that there's a hazard there? Definition of a hazard, it's a source of danger. So, why are hazards missed? Anybody in the crowd want to answer that? I have one person here. Anybody want to answer that? She's not answering that. I'm really disappointed, Mrs. Cacavalli. All right. But anyway, a couple of things. A hazard is detectable by the individual, but the individual is not able to identify the hazard. Okay, that's one way. Another is a hazard is not reasonably detected given the information provided at the time. So when you go out to do a risk assessment, you're going out to take a look at the scoping out a job, taking a look at the job specs. You can see some of the hazards, but sometimes you just can't recognize some of the other ones. So those are the two things as questions as to why they're missed. So let's see. So some of the tools we could use, and we've talked about these over the last year. We talked about it at the 2020, annual refresher. We've been talking about it throughout the year. And just a couple of tools that we could use, that you could use in order to start to take a look and identify hazards and risk associated with the jobs. Line of fire, putting yourself in between. When there's any kind of energy or tension, you want to make sure that you're standing off to the side. You're not in that direct line of fire. Even when you're using a tool, that you don't have your hand in that way, so your hand has the chance of being hurt. A mind's eye. So this is kind of picturing what could happen. So you're sitting there thinking about it, you're saying like, in my mind's eye, I see myself bent up like a pretzel. Or I see something bleeding, with my blood coming out. So you try to avoid those mind's eyes, but it's a good tool to use. You look at a situation, you say like, oh, man, we could really get hurt here. I could really get hurt here. So another one is what if? Well, if I put this thing together, what if? What if they don't connect right? What if the piece doesn't fit into that piece of machinery? What if the safety guard isn't really working? So there's a couple of pieces. And then I talked about ABBY, all right? ABBY is above, below, behind, and inside. So when you're trying to recognize hazards, you're taking a look at above the scenario, behind the scenario, below the scenario, and inside, if you have any of that. So these are some of the tools that we could use. A new tool that I want to introduce, and it's going to be a little bit hard to see, so these are going to be part of the presentation, or at least a handout with this video. It's called energy sources, and there's 10. Grab my little cheat sheet here. Okay, so Chevron developed this a few years back, and I think it's really a good tool. And it really talks about the 10 type of energy sources. Energy to lift things, transport, assemble materials, transfer by hoists, cranes, equipment, tools. Some materials store energy in material states that release in the act of performing work. Excavation is one of those. Blasting. So we take a look at all of that. So some of the ways that we take a look at it are pre-job safety briefings, toolbox talks. All right. So you got to have that job safety analysis, or JSA mentality. You're identifying the job steps, you're identifying the risk, and then what you're doing is identifying the remedies and the solutions. So this energy wheel, as they call it, can support meaningful conversation and share some kind of tactical knowledge, as you're talking about and doing your risk assessments. So let me just give you a couple of examples, and these are some of the jobs that I got from the research that I did. Suspended loads, that's gravity. Uneven surfaces, that's gravity. Heavy machinery, motion. Power lines, electrical. Welding in hot weather, temperature. Welding with light, radiation. Trip hazards, gravity. Uneven surfaces, gravity. So you get the point here that all of these energy sources that we deal with, have that kind of relationship to the hazards and the risk associated with the jobs that we do. So this is out there. These are definitions of the 10 energy sources that are there. So I'll put this out, and I think it's another tool that you and your teams can start using to make sure that you capture all the risk and all the hazards associated with the jobs that you are doing. So with that being said, next week, here's a little preview. If I could actually turn the page. So next week, we're going to get a little bit into the mind. All right. People have said I'm a head case, but we're going to talk a little bit about complacency versus habits, good habits, bad habits, and how we deal with complacency, not only in our lives, but obviously in the workplace. Tilcon New York, have a safe week, enjoy, and welcome back to those coming back.